Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Blame It on Marketing with Emma and Ruta. And this week is our seasonal special where you get me and Ruta, just us, just the two of us. And, when we've done these before, sometimes we've picked, more jovial topics, or we've tried to, trigger each other, and all those sorts of things.
How dare
But actually, this time we have something that's been on our minds for quite a long time that is bothering both of us. So the topic today is buyer experience. And you might be thinking, well, hang on a sec, isn't that just customer experience? But actually, no, Ruta and I have got some very good reasons for talking about it as kind of like a separate experience. So, Ruta, without further ado, I want to ask you, and obviously we'll get into it, because I feel like I'm interviewing you now. Isn't that funny? But we can interview each other.
Each other?
You're like, please don't.
Please don't.
Why
I
do
have
you
no
think...
good answers.
That isn't... Well, we know that's not true. We're not putting yourself down at the start of a bloody podcast episode, mate. Let's not start there. Why do you think companies don't really care when it comes to buyer experience?
It's probably because, to start with, it's not something that's on anyone's plate, really. Like, if you think about sales, I guess it's a bit sales, a bit marketing, a bit customer success. Like, it's everyone's job, and it's a lot product, right? Because that will, depending on what kind of product you have, will really dictate that. So I think, to start with, it's probably because it's not anyone's job to worry about it. And then, to be a bit more on the cynical side, I think in B2B, we highly optimize for ourselves and not for the buyers, because it's about how efficient we are and how well we score leads and how much effort we put into them and who's worth talking to and who's not worth talking to. Is it an ICP? Is it not an ICP? All of those like very I don't know how to call it, like self-important things. So I think that's probably why in B2B there's this big gap between what we think the buying experience should be and what it is. What about you? What do you think is getting in the way of great buying experiences in B2B?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think for the most part, I think we kind of do the bare minimum. I think a lot of B2B companies are like, oh, you know what, we want to make it easy for people to book in a demo. And we want to try and, nurture people into our funnels. But I don't think we ever really put ourselves in the shoes of the people who are on the receiving end of the experience. And I generally do think that is, I think it's something that should be owned by marketing and sales. And then I think you're right. I think, ultimately when you think about some of the metrics that sales and marketing are, required to kind of achieve, it's always usually to do with pipeline or volume of leads or, closed revenue. It's never to do with like the experience that they give people. I mean, some marketing teams might be tied in with some of the customer success metrics around customer experience, that sort of stuff, or sales as well. You'd hope good, they might have some advocacy ones, NPS, that kind of stuff. But nobody's ever bothered, and I've certainly, I've been guilty of this myself. Like, I've never sat down really and truly mapped out what I think that experience is like when, someone's actually trying to buy from you, other than how can I do it as quickly and as efficiently as possible, which are part of it, but not everything, I think.
And before we dig too deeply into the issues with it, we should have probably done this first, but can we just say kind of what we mean by when we say buying experience, although the words are in there, but what does that mean to you personally?
Oh yeah, so for me that is everything that I experience. I suppose, like, if I'm looking at this from a real marketing perspective, like, because we're hyper conscious of the funnel and all of that stuff, but if I sit outside of your funnel, so I haven't yet booked a discovery call or a demo in, especially we're talking B2B SaaS a lot here, right? So just for everyone listening, that's the lingo we're going with. I'm thinking of everything that happens in that kind of like awareness stage almost. So everything from like, how did the company get hold of my contact details? And then what do you do with them? What leads me to then booking a discovery call? What's the process like when I actually book that in? What are the demos like? What's the communication like from the salesperson? So I think it's all of those touch points from kind of like almost slightly outside of the funnel into
before
the
awareness. Yeah.
exactly kind of before awareness and then into that. And I think there is so much that influences that. And that's that stage, that or that like mystical bit where everyone's like, I have no idea what people in that bit of the funnel are even thinking. And it's like, well, actually,
Yeah.
there, I think Ruta and I might have some ideas about how you might find out. What about to you? Do you think that makes
Yeah.
sense? The description?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's thinking about, the best way to get that customer across the line, and not in a sense of like for us, but what do we need to achieve with that customer in order for them to be confident enough, trust us enough, think that we are the right solution for them. And yeah, it comes down to everything. It's all of those touch points and how they go, but also it's then the language you use in your follow-ups, how quickly you do that, what marketing material somebody gets as they're in the funnel, like every single touch point through the sales and marketing, and even into like the onboarding journey, right? Like that early stage of CS is all included in there. Yeah. Which is again makes me think about how when we want to work on conversion rates in B2B, we typically think about, okay, who do we trim out? What do we take out for the buyer to make our conversion rates better? It's not like, oh, how do we fix the buying experience? Because, like, for example, in e-commerce, that's your bread and butter. How
That's your
do
whole
I make the
thing.
buying experience, yeah, as good as
Mm.
possible? How do I like trim the checkout to one page instead of two, because I know that people fall off, so we just, yeah, we don't think about it. It's very self-centered, which is strange, right? Because we're still trying to sell to someone. Like, what's that
Yeah.
about?
I mean, but you've got to go back to the fact that, like, I think even in marketing, for the most part, we're still, I think that some of the challenge that we've still got in considering the buyer experience is that we're still like lots of marketing, and it's not just marketers' fault. We know this. There's so many blame it on marketing episodes about this, so we're not hating on you if you're stuck in this situation. But a lot of it is the fact that like the organization still talks about itself in a way that aligns to the way that the founder and the organization wants to talk about itself, not about the audience and how the audience and the customer speak about it. And it's like we always talk about like, oh, we need to solve our audience's pain points, all those sorts of things. We need to speak their language, but also that experience of buying from you needs to marry up with that as well, because otherwise it's so good to be customer centric, right? But how are you going to get customers if the first hurdle is shitty, right? Like you're already putting up the barriers and making it really, really hard. I don't see, we're consultants. We see, marketing strategies. We talk about marketing strategies with people very often. One of the things that I'm always really keen to put on there is something to do with buyer experience, like whether that's removing friction from the process, or it's speeding, like whatever it might be. But like historically, I haven't necessarily seen that in marketing strategies, and I've certainly not had those conversations necessarily.
I've never had it seen identified as a problem in a company, like, you know like, oh well, our buying experience is shit, so we know we're missing a bunch of people, like how do we. I've never seen it. It doesn't have to be in those words either, like you don't need to use the wording buyer experience, but like that's never, that mechanism and that kind of workflow isn't very focused on. It's just like, oh, just get them to a demo, just get them to give us the details and we'll like figure it out later. And it's like, yeah, that's all good, and that's fine, but again, almost pointless if you then can't convert them, right? Like spending all that money to get someone into a demo and then it's like, there.
And that's it. It's like, yeah, the kind of conversations you have internally are always, like you said, they're always like, how can we get people to book a demo? Yeah, we'll worry about the rest later. And then when we hand them over to customer success, that's where the customer experience starts, which again is a really terrible way of thinking about that. But it's so often true. Like the relationship hinges on the customer success manager. And if you've got good salespeople who are relationship focused, obviously they're great. But like generally, like you say, it starts at that point. But I mean, we can give some examples of this now, but I know, for example, I've been on the receiving end of really crappy buyer experiences, and then that's completely put me off. And I think people think that we will forget that stuff, like, as in, if someone leaves a bad taste in your mouth, that's all of a sudden going to be forgotten. And I hate to be doom and gloom, but the opposite of advocacy, which we always say is bad advocacy, that lasts a lot longer. If we love the bad advocacy, it lasts a lot longer, doesn't it? Because it's like, you've given me a bad experience. And I think, like, we know this because psychologically our brains absorb negative stuff.
Yeah, negative things are much bigger than positive things are the same size, if that makes sense. Like, we index on them much harder.
Exactly. So it's like, psychologically we are set up to remember the negative, and then someone gives you a bad experience. So I think, I mean, let's give some examples. So the classic one is, and the one that we have moaned about a lot, is the, like, your organization is too small, you don't meet my ICP. In fact, actually, sometimes I don't even think these companies know what their ICP is. They just like, we want to sell to this size organization because that's what we want to do, and therefore we're
If you're
going to
not Oracle, don't talk to us.
Don't talk to us. We're not interested in you. And it's like, that to me is so short-sighted. Like we were saying before, like, people move jobs, people have networks. There is just the general internet. people record stuff on TikTok now. Like, people put stuff on X. You are opening yourself up to a can of worms.
Remember when we were at Clear Review and I was looking at, don't remember even what it was anymore. I was looking at some software, basically, and I had submitted a demo request twice over like 2 weeks, not like a single peep, not even a confirmation email like that I had put these things through. And I was like, what the hell is going on? Like, this is a huge brand. So I then went on LinkedIn and basically was like, what is going on, guys? Like, can someone respond to me and like tag the company? And then, like, lo and behold, 2 days later, somebody like found the post and like was like, oh, can you go talk to her? And it turns out we were too small for them, which again is completely fine, like, because you know what, their software actually didn't work well for our use case. But you can just tell me that in an email, even if it is like, or just give me a quick call. Like, it doesn't take much energy to like still give me a good buying experience, even though I'm completely not your ICP. And I am the kind of person that will, like, if Emma, you come to me and you're like, oh, I'm looking at these guys and I've had a shit time with them, I will tell you. And like, that will color your perception of them, right? So it doesn't take a lot to make that experience great.
Yeah. We're savvy shoppers as well. And obviously we're in marketing, right? So we're very different. And I think it's fair to say that Ruta and I are both quite confident. But I have been on calls with people where, like, I have, like, someone said to me, just watch it with that company because of X. Like, something's happened and, there's something a bit about them. And I've called them out on it on the call. Like, I've said to them, like, just so you know, you work with this company where my friend works, and this is the feedback that I've had. So I'm really, like, I've got a lot of like, your tech solution or whatever it might be sounds like it's going to be good for me, but actually, like, I've heard that you're really difficult to work with. So I've got reservations, and I'm going to call you out for that. And I can imagine I'm not going to be alone. I imagine there are forums and there are groups of people who, like, when they are buying stuff, they're like, don't buy that stuff. I mean, in the same way that people do it for B2C, do you really think people don't do that for B2B? Because they absolutely do. So yeah, that is a classic one. I think one of the other ones that you hear a lot is people being made to jump through too many hoops. Like, either that first initial bit of the process is too long, and you're making people have like multiple calls, and or the reverse, you're like holding out on calls, or you're insisting that the decision maker is on the calls, all those sorts of things. When someone feels like they are being sold to in that way, like, as in, you're like, oh, you're just putting me through medic, like, or whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
And also,
whatever.
you know what? Like, we're super harsh because we know all of these things,
Yeah.
right? So we're like, I can see what you're doing here. But you know, there'll be other people that don't know about this, but it'll still feel like a shit experience to
Feel.
them. And you
Yeah.
yeah, you posted this on blameyourmarketing.com this morning, and Katie came back
Yeah.
also, like, to add to this, being like, when they make you jump through a million hoops to actually see the product, or they keep thinking you're too junior, so they keep trying to get to your manager before being
Yeah.
able to see the product. And I'm just like, and I know exactly why they're doing that, because you need the person with the
The
cash on the
sign
call.
off.
But
Yeah.
you realize that that person has been tasked with looking at software.
Yeah.
Like, why are you preventing them from doing their job? And why are you not doing your job? Not to be harsh, but that's the truth, right?
You know, if someone says, I mean, it does get my back up when someone says, are you the decision maker, and are you the budget holder, and have you got budget? But I also do
Yeah,
understand
don't
why you
say it
need
in
to
those
ask
words,
that.
guys.
You can be asked, like, I always think a really nice way of finding this stuff out, right? And I'm not a salesperson, but like we say, we've been on the receiving end of it, and we are marketers, and we are, you know, revenue savvy marketers. So we want the sales, guys. How about asking, like, what are the big projects that are coming up for you at the moment, and how does this align to the projects that you've got going on? Hello, because if it's something that you're like, oh, this is in my strategy and therefore I've got a line for it, you're like, well, I would like to think that means that someone's got the freaking budget. Like,
Yeah. Or even to say, like, you know, what's the process, and who else is going to have to, you know, approve of the software? Like, you know, how do you guys make decisions in your team about buying new software?
how would you like me to help? How can I
Yeah,
help
if you
you?
love
Like,
this, how can I help you
yeah,
sell this in?
yeah.
Yeah.
What can I do? Yeah, exactly. Like, be a
Oh, this gets
supportive
me so
person.
annoyed.
I know, and
I'm
it's
like
like, but it's
seething
so
inside.
common. I was just going to say, where it all goes wrong, right, is that what happens is you sell to some, right, so at the point this shitty stuff happens, but then you obviously still sell to people, otherwise you don't have a company, so you're still selling to people, and then what happens is that they are handed over to a genuinely lovely customer success manager, because this always happens, who keeps the relationship going. Then you do an NPS, and the NPS, usually if they're the admin anyway, comes back good, unless there's something fundamentally flawed with your product. And then what happens is everyone pats themselves on the back and goes, oh, don't we give everyone a wonderful customer experience? But what you haven't done is you've not thought about the fact that you will probably at some point have categorically lost sales because you've given people a shitty buying experience. Like, I don't know how many times, and
And
again, this is
we
because
can
we're
prove that.
savage. Yeah.
Yeah, but we can prove that because the amount of posts we can find on LinkedIn talking about this shit, right? Like, it's not just our opinion. Like, people are experiencing this all the freaking time.
Think about the amount of brands that you've got on your I think there's, I can't remember the exact stat, so I'm going to apologize in advance, but it certainly used to be that, like, one person deals with up to like 20 to 30 vendors at any one point in a job when you work in house. And then from that list, you only have 3 that are your trusted suppliers. And everyone else is like a mishmash of, like, I either have to use them or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So think
It
about
was there
when you're
before.
looking, yeah, it was there before, whatever. But think about when you're looking to buy something new in, shouldn't the ultimate goal always be, how can I get on that trusted supplier list? And how can I get these people to say good things about me? And that starts from that initial first interaction. I mean, I can't tell you the amount of times that I've also told salespeople to take me off their lists. Like, leave me alone. Because you're literally like,
Yeah.
I got one on Sunday night and it riled me up, and I responded back and I was like, can you please take me off your mailing list? Why are you emailing me on a Sunday night, man? Like, no. So yeah, sales people
They assume you're
comms is
bored.
on. I mean, they're like, you know what? She's definitely thinking about buying tech on a Sunday evening at 5:30.
Yep. Yep.
I could not be
You are
further
that
from
kind
the
of
truth.
girly.
Definitely not. So yeah, I think that's it, isn't it? There's all these experiences, like, you make it too difficult, or you don't communicate. Like, your experience, Ruta, you've had to chase people in the past to, like, get demos, or to even just speak to a
Yep.
human being.
Get
Or,
pricing.
yeah, get pricing.
Are we going to talk about pricing? There's a few exceptions. where
Yeah.
products are actually complicated and bespoke enough to where you can't give a price.
Yeah.
But the rest of you, you need to put pricing or even an illusion of what the pricing
Yes.
is publicly. Like Emma and I were talking about this the other day. So we're millennials, right? And we're already seething at this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Gen Z ain't gonna fuck with you if
They're
your
not going to
website
bother.
doesn't tell them what you do, doesn't give you a demo, and can't show them the pricing. Like, they're not going to be talking to anybody on the phone. So, like,
Yeah.
if that's your ammo right now, like, and you'd be like, oh, you know, Gen Z, whatever, like, they're not. No, they're coming into managerial positions. There's Gen Zs now
Mm.
that are like, was it 27 now that the oldest
Yeah.
technical like Gen Zs are? Right in the end, they're coming into their buying positions, and you just can't be pulling shit like that. Like, I'm sorry, it's not gonna cut it.
Yeah. I already don't, you know, like you said with millennials, like we already don't have the patience. I do not have the patience to sit around and wait for you to send me the price. Like,
Mm-hmm.
let alone freaking chase you
Especially if
for
I
it.
think you're like pricing me based on how much you think you can charge me.
Oh,
Not having
yeah.
any of that.
No, 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 no,
Because
no.
again, that's one of the reasons to not put your pricing right up, because you're gonna price me based upon how much budget you think I have.
And I think that's a really uh that goes along with the, you know, like the people who you know, they've got their ICP, and their ICP is a complete fabrication, like as in because they were like, oh, we want
Dream
to sell to
ICP.
these dream
Fantasy
ICP.
ICP.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like, well, that's
Yeah.
great, but also you don't sell to those people. So like, what are you doing? You know, don't think you know how much budget I've got. Like, because the likelihood is, if we have a good relationship from the outset, I feel like you're actually going to partner with me, I'm going to be really honest about my budget, like I
Mm-hmm.
usually am. And I know, again,
But
we're
also, I don't.
marketers, but
Yeah. But also, when I'm doing my research, pricing is one of the biggest barriers, right? Like, I know roughly how much I have to spend, and if your pricing is 2x that, then you absolutely have to like blow my socks off, do above and beyond, and probably more than 2x of the value for me to pay for it, because that's not in the books, right? So if I have to be chasing you around for pricing and I can't do that check to begin with, I'm probably actually going to just go off and check a bunch of other competitors that do give me pricing, go through them, probably buy one of them, unless something has gone drastically wrong, then come back to you at the end. Like, that is how we shop, right? Like, I don't know if you would do the same thing.
oh god, yeah. I mean, yeah, pricing. And then also, I think one of the other things you and I were going to talk about was trust, and whether you can trust the, and I think the pricing thing adds into that feeling that you're like, I think you're just making up a price here. I will go and sense check that. Like, do not think that I will not go on a forum and ask other people what you paid. Like, because I 100% will. um
Yeah,
in the
or
same
like,
way that, yeah.
between the two of us, we'll know enough people to go ask
Oh
and
yeah.
find someone that uses it and like get a full demo from them.
Absolutely.
Like, I've demoed software I use to
Same.
people for them to buy it. Like, like, it goes deep.
I think that's it. I don't think people realize like how important that network thing is. I mean, there's so much data out there that tells people this, but yet they still don't do anything with it. It's like, we know that that's what people do. Like, my first port of call is always to ask, if I'm buying marketing software, to ask the other marketers. If I'm buying like accountancy software, who do I go and ask? I ask my friends who are accountants. Like, that's no joke. So why would I, and that applies to everything. Like, and obviously that's that goes outside of just SaaS. That's professional services as well. Like, if there are consultancies or consultants or whatever it is you offer as a professional service provider, and I think you've taken, like, I've worked with
Same.
you and you've
Yeah,
taken
same,
the
same.
piss, I'm gonna say to people, this
Yep.
is the score.
Yep.
Like, I've had this with marketing agencies. So basically, especially that's you're too small to work with, where I have been like, I really enjoyed working with this marketing agency. They were great with us. And then I have gone and recommended them to a friend. And then the friend has gone and been like, hey, we'd really like to work with you. It's a recommendation from Emma. And then the marketing agency turned round to my friend and said, I'm really sorry, but like, you're too small. Like, you don't have the budget. But that's exactly what they said. So that's what they said to a referral. I was like, well, I will now never recommend you ever again because that is outrageous.
Yeah.
That's how quickly you turn people off.
Yeah.
You know, it's
and
that
also,
straightforward.
Like, I feel like we get extra bad buying experience now that we're consultants, because
oh god,
no one wants to really fuck with us because they don't know who we work for. We might not say at the beginning, like whatever. So, but also on the same vein, if I'm looking for something and Emma tells me to buy something, I'll go buy it. Like, it's as simple as that. Like, I won't even go through the research, project to buy something. If I know one of my friends is using something and it's good, like, I'll do that. So when you're treating consultants like shit, you're not helping yourself in any way, because they'll then go and tell other people what happened, right? So if anything, it's worse to treat consultants like shit, because they'll have way more touch points with different organizations than somebody sitting in house for 4 years, right?
Yeah, oh my god, definitely. Yeah, we've both been on the receiving end of that. Like, I can't I've literally been like stopped from having demos. And then in my head also, but then on the flip side, where I've had really good buyer experiences is where people have been like, "Oh, you're a consultant. Do you want to partner up?" Like, that's a really easy thing to do. Is like, keep the consultants who are bringing, and I might only bring in one client every few years for you, but at the same time, wouldn't you want to build that relationship? I find it wild, and I get why it happens, right? Because everybody's like, oh, like, building relationships is a really inefficient thing. Like, realistically, it takes time, it takes effort. We can't build relationships with absolutely everybody, but you can treat people with just like the basic level of human decency, which I think is actually lacking from a lot of people's buyer experiences.
Yeah, it's very detached, isn't it? It's like, it's a numbers game, not a people interaction game. Can we talk about one other aspect of buying experience? Because we've talked about sales and marketing a lot, but I think that like, we talk about the 4Ps, marketing has been basically given one of them now. And product is a huge area of buyer experience that I don't that SaaS companies that do it right, and everyone else just fucking sucks. And marketing doesn't really have a way to say fix it, because there is no marketing, what would we call it, marketing pipeline product priorities. That
No,
was
you're right.
triple P. But there is no such thing. Like,
the hierarchy is product. It's product is here. Products at the center of everything, and especially in startup world, like, products at the center of everything, and it's usually connected to the founder and the founder's dreams for everything, which is, totally fine. But then what happens is there is this huge disconnect. Like, marketing are over here, they understand the audience, they understand the buyer and the customers, or at least they should do,
and how they want to buy.
And what's useful from a product context, and things that should be built, and all those sorts of things. And there is, because product's up here, like, and marketing sits down here, it's like, in the hierarchy of things, like, we're building product for like, quite often the sake of building it, or because we end up building product for like the loudest shouting customers. So we never build product that would actually solve, I mean, it might solve some of the challenges of our audience, right? Because of course it should.
Or at least you're not building product to have a good buying experience, right? Like, how many times have you wanted a free trial of something, and then it turns out a poor salesperson has to qualify you and set you up in the back and, like, do all of that. Like, there isn't a process to do it. It's just they're trying to, they're definitely on the buyer experience journey, they're trying to satisfy it, but product is completely sitting outside of that. Like, you have to hack it together, basically.
Yeah, and it's interesting as well, because it's not like there aren't really good examples of where this works and it's great, right? You only have to think about, so Ruta and I use Mighty Networks for the Blame It on Marketing community. That is a solid example of a good buyer experience right there. Like, You can go in, you can set it up, I can pay, it's on my card, I don't have to talk to anybody. Okay, yes, the product, the thing that you're using the product for is maybe in some regards people would say, well, that's simplistic, so therefore it's fine. Why should anything else be any different? Why? Like, tell me why. So what? Because it's accountancy software or HR tech or something, that should be any different? I don't think so.
Yeah, but I can buy Zero with my credit card.
I mean,
The
that's
most,
true.
yeah, like the most used accounting software that you could make as complicated as you fancy. I can literally show up on the website and buy it. So, and also, if there's complicated bits, it doesn't mean you don't solve them maybe with people, but that shouldn't stop you from having a good and easy upfront buying experience, right? Like, you know, Clearview, great example. It's a hard product to sell because it affects your entire company. Absolutely. Fine. That's complicated. You have to get buy-in. Doesn't mean we couldn't do free trials as well. Doesn't mean we couldn't have demo accounts. None of those things. It. Fix the be creative and fix the problem. Don't just blame a complexity on not improving how you do things, right?
How you do it, yeah. And that's
But
the other
again,
thing as well.
we've got zero product time.
Yeah, we don't get and even like product marketers, that's not the job of a product marketer, is it, to be in there like dictating, well, not dictating, sorry, wrong word, be in there sort of like guiding product decisions. Like, they're in there to market the product, that's it, as it is, not to basically go back and say, well, actually maybe we should stop building new features and maybe we should focus our attention on how people could actually, I don't know, log in and use this thing and buy it. We don't get to have any say on that.
Come into that, actually. We're talking about this as if like no one's buying products out there because B2B buying experiences are shite, and we obviously know that's not true. Like, companies are making money, people are buying products even when the experiences are bad. So why should companies care if they can still make sales?
I think this goes back to your earlier point about the Gen Z guys and millennials as well, actually. Like, how are you still going to be selling in the next 2 to 5 years if you don't do this stuff? Like, I really genuinely believe there is going to be a problem. You are going to all, and what will happen is, naturally, loads of marketing people will get blamed because they'll be like, "Here, you're not filling up the pipeline," but actually it's because the experience sucks from a buyer perspective. Like, people don't want to speak to people, they want to be able to make purchasing decisions online, like, as in pay online, and have access, like instant access to the platform. They don't have to want to wait for stuff. And if you don't do that stuff, you don't start thinking about it, you are literally going to potentially destroy your business. Like, again, not to sound like a doomsdayer, but I can think of quite a few that will really struggle.
It'll get harder and harder, right? At least, it'll get progressively harder, and you'll need to, your acquisition costs will keep going up and up and up, which means your pricing will probably have to go up to cover for it. And obviously then it's like you're in a spinning wheel of shit by that point. I've got another reason why. So the tech market is getting very saturated. So for every single tech category, there's, I will say, almost hundreds of different offerings of software, and the ones that so you can get what you need at different price points, at different complexities, at different points in your career, right? But the way to stand out from there being 100 competitors is to have an absolutely incredible buying experience. Because if you've caught that person and your marketing was good enough to get their attention in the first place, if you give them a great buying experience, it's 1000% going to be part of their decision-making process.
Yeah. You only have to look at the fact that there are, like, yeah, I mean, that's it. We've said this quite a lot, like chasing the tail of your competitors, like, always trying to like one up your competitors with features and things like that. Like, be real. Like, most tech is like for like
with being like, good salespeople and good marketers. Yeah,
it is like the products are like for like. So what else is at that point? What else is there? And it's only going to get worse over the next 2 to 5 years. Like, there are going to be more and more companies sprouting up, and And if you don't think like that, then yeah, like you say, Roots, it's going to be really tough going. So yeah, I think it is that, isn't it? It's like this is how you stand up from your competitors. Also, shouldn't you want to give your buyers I just always go back to that. Shouldn't you want to give your buyers a good experience?
Yeah. Oh man, Kieran posted something really relevant to this the other day. Kieran met a lovely friend from Mercia who's been on the podcast. He's a VC guy, and I think he either posted or he commented on basically how once we start tracking for certain numbers, it obviously influences our behavior, right? So if we're tracking around numbers that are not buyer centric, then we're going to behave in a non buyer centric manner. So, arguably, we need to be looking at indicators that then match to the buying experience, and new metrics maybe that we need to follow, or things that we need to revamp to understand that buyer experience, so that we can actually improve it on their side, on the buyer side, rather than on our efficiency side of things, right?
Yeah. And it's not like we don't have access to all of that data already, because even if you wanted to look at the number of people who complete the form on your website to those who actually sit the demo, that's a good enough place to start. That all of those kind of things, they're very basic metrics that you've got access to. So Ruta, I think in the last few minutes we should talk about how people can actually like improve this stuff. Like, where do you start?
Yes, absolutely. So what Emma said was a good starting point. Just look at how many people drop off in different areas of your conversion funnel, and look how long it takes as well. Velocity. So we talk about conversion and velocity, right? But I think for you and I, it breaks down into probably like 5 categories of things you should think about. So it's understanding. So how easy is it to understand your product and the pricing, and do I know I'm the right person when I land on your website or any comms that I see from you? Trust, like we said, huge. Don't even need to explain what that is. Speed, so velocity again. Friction, again, we spoke about that. And then future proofing. So are you ready for that next generation of buyers? Because in 10 years, it's just going to be millennials and Gen Zs buying tech, right? Yeah, those are the categories. And you can go as deep or as shallow in them as you want. But yeah, just maybe trying to secret shop yourself, essentially, will probably do the trick to find out what that experience is like.
Yeah, and I would imagine that if you made that a priority, marketing and sales priority for the next financial year, when everyone is struggling in a really difficult economic landscape, that you would see better conversion rates straight out the gate if you actually started to think about some of this stuff. Like, Ruta and I will run some experiments and we'll come back to you, but I am pretty sure I would place a high bet on that actually being able to help you drive pipeline and revenue if you start thinking about those things in the same way that thinking about customer experience does. So we're all about the buyer experience for next year.
Yeah, for the most part, it's very cheap to do, right? Like,
you
could do most of this stuff with just the people you have in the business and manpower. Like, you don't need to go and invest a bunch of money into new tech, or you can if you want to, of course, but like you can do this pretty inexpensively compared to trying to come up with new marketing channels, or trying to hire a bunch more outbound salespeople, or whatever other ways you can boost your conversion rates and your revenue at the end of the day.
It's almost like a like you have those stress tests, don't you? It's like one of the key things in the stress test should be, what's the buyer experience like? Do we think we're giving people a good experience? And yeah, if you really aren't sure, Ruta and I will be very happy to come along and secret shop you and tell you.
Yeah. Or get some of our friends to do it, right? Like,
yeah,
we've got enough people around to secret shop anyone who needs a secret shop. Yeah, it's go back to the basics, set some, as Emma said, set a goal around this, set some ways to measure it. You already have the data. I'm pretty sure 99.9%, or if you don't, the basic stuff will give you the data. And then just start tackling each stage, like methodically. What are we doing wrong here? Where is it dropping off? Fix it. It's a little bit CRO as well, in that realm of things. But yeah, happy 2024 and to a good year of buying experiences, I guess.
Yeah, we're coining BX, so if we start seeing it appear,
We're coining BX. Yeah, it's ours.
It's ours, thanks.
Nobody else uses it. Jokes.
Yeah,
There's a
please
trademark
do.
episode coming soon.
I don't think we can trademark that, but I hashtagged BX early on LinkedIn, and there's no other BX anywhere. So I think we've started something.
Yeah, if you've got any good like buying experience stories as well, just post it and hashtag BX, and we'd love to have a little read. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much everyone for listening. As always, we really enjoy doing episodes with the two of us because we feel like we get each other going usually, right? And if you want some more of this stuff, go join us on blameitonmarketing.com. We often post about like episodes before we record them to get your input and that kind of thing. And also we'll be having some courses on there, I think already by the time this goes out. So you'll probably want to go check that out. So yeah, thank you for listening. And thanks, Emma.